Welcome back, everyone. So today we're going to be making something and we're going to 3D print in, we're designing this in FreeCAD. I got into juggling recently, and so I got a kit and there's nothing to hold the juggling balls. So I thought, well, I might as well learn some more in FreeCAD and design a case for these. And then of course we'll 3D print it. So normally in CAD softwares, there's a way to pattern something. So you see how there's 3 circles and 3 lines on the outside and the inside. And normally you'd be able to draw this once and then pattern it. But there is no pattern for sketches in FreeCAD, apparently. None that I could find. If you know of a way, please let me know in the comments. But I spent quite a while trying to figure that out, and I ultimately just started over and realized I'm gonna have to do it this way. So I went ahead and drew all my constraints and my lines and trimmed it up to make it clean, and that allowed me to do what I needed to do. So before I started, I took measurements and I measured how big each ball was and how I want it placed, and I kind of figured out, a way to close it, because it'll have a lid and everything. This is something I can just chuck in a backpack. You can see here I was trying to do an offset of the outer geometry, and there's no offset for sketches that I can find in FreeCAD. So if you know a way to offset entities like this in 2D for Sketcher, I would really appreciate that. But I was trying to figure out a way to do this, and ultimately this route didn't even work either. But so I just redrew everything again, and then you'll see I basically try to match it to the origin, but for some reason I can't get that to work either. So I'm just searching for some constraints that will allow me to place the common points together, and there you go. And you can see that it's 3.5 millimeters apart. So I was thinking that would create a wall that was 3.5 millimeters thick, but you can see I'm going back and forth and I just can't get it to create what's called a pad, which is like an extrusion if you're used to other CAD softwares, and I just couldn't get it to work. And this is just not the route they want you to go. They want you to draw the outermost, and then if you want to make a hole into it, you do that as a separate feature. Basically, you do that as what's called a pocket. And so eventually I give up on that, and I get rid of the thing that I had there. And unfortunately, because of that, I had to change the sketch I already had. Basically, do everything 3 times, which is fine. So there is a problem within FreeCAD that's well documented. I think the name is the topological naming issue or something of that nature. And so when you create a new sketch, you don't want to do it onto a face. And while this is not a tutorial, in a previous video I made, which was also not a tutorial, I did that, and I did some more research, and I found that that's not the right practice for this software. In other softwares, it's not an issue, but in this one, what happens is, as far as I understand it, when you edit a part, if you have something tied to that face, once you edit it, the face gets like a new name, and so things down the timeline will lose track of what it is or replace themselves, and it just can create a huge mess. And so it's best practice to create what's called a datum plane and just put it exactly where you want it, which means you got to kind of think about where everything is, which is fine. You got to think about things differently, and this is just a better way to do it, so that you don't have to mess around with the mistakes that you already have made and creating more mistakes. So you can see here, I have to draw this sketch several times because I can't find of a good way to, like, quote unquote, project the sketches from other sketches to the new sketch without using external references, which is also not the right way. And you can see I'm going about this the wrong way at first here, and it's just not built for this. This software doesn't want you to do that for certain reasons, and so it makes it really difficult. Like if I wanted to draw that line and have that point end on the midpoint of that arc, while it's possible, it's kind of hard without a reference. And so I was trying to create a reference so I could measure the distance, but yeah, so I just kind of gave up on that and just went for what looked good. And all those circles, every time, they always share the same center point. And I did that by measuring that line they go from to the origin. And I made them all the same distance, which I believe was 28 millimeters. So here I'm creating another datum plane. And this was, I actually was changing the height of it, because if you can see at the bottom there, it says 4 millimeters. Earlier that was 7, and now it's 3.5. Basically, this is just saying how thick the bottom wall is. Not sure what these dimensions here are helping me. I guess they're helping me understand how big the center post is. Because we're 3D printing this, we don't want it to be too thin, because 3D prints don't like thin pencil-like shapes. They kind of break in the vertical axis. If it's very tall, if it's pressed laterally, it'll kind of break. So I actually wanted to figure out a way to make a hole on the side of this piece, which, to be fair, in other CAD softwares, it's a little bit difficult there too, to create a plane off a radius. But here I just basically made a datum plane that was offset from one of the main planes that we start with, and I just went past the arc, the body, because here it doesn't really matter. I'm not extruding, I'm actually cutting, or I'm not padding, I'm pocketing. So I kind of just mess around with my placements here, and I finally get to the point where I'm making my sketch to cut, and I found something I really dislike. It's not hard. So my sketch technically has a front and back, which doesn't make sense because it's 2D, but if you look here, I keep looking at it from one perspective to the other, and it's because if you look at it from the back, you can't like click on specific parts. They just don't click. You have to look at it from the front of that sketch to be able to manipulate certain things, and it's just really annoying. And so tip, look at your sketches from the front. And I'm kind of just playing around with some geometries here, trying to figure out how I want it to be. What's going to happen here is there's going to be like a rubber band or a hair tie or some sort of elastic that will wrap around. It'll be a loop, and it'll wrap around itself around a post in this hole, and that's going to be how it attaches to the top. There's going to be some knobs on the lid, and of course there'll be more than one point so that they tighten down and keep the whole thing closed so nothing falls out. So I actually made a mistake here. I was supposed to cut those or trim those, and there you go. So now I'm going to make it look better. I'm going to add some fillets on the inside here, kind of playing around with the sizing and shape and placement. All right. And so now I'm going to add some fillets on the top and the bottom just to make it nicer. We're 3D printing this. Why not? You know, we can make all kinds of weird geometries. Alright, and so now I'm actually going to, for the first time, make a assembly in FreeCAD. And to my surprise, there's no assembly files or assembly structure. There's no native assemblies in FreeCAD. You'd have to use a different workbench. That's an add-on. But there are a few options there. But I just designed it in place, which is another option. I don't like that option, but it's another one. And so you just create another body that's different than the one you were working from. And this allows you to edit one versus the other. It's a similar process that Fusion has, in a way. So I'm just creating this geometry again in slightly different proportions, and of course I have to do this a couple times because I made the same mistake where I made the smaller one first, and so I had to make it bigger. And so I'm just kind of trying to figure out how large I want it to be, and it is a little frustrating to deal with assemblies this way, in my opinion, especially when you don't have a pattern for your sketch, so you kind of have these kind of issues. And I'm having some constraint issues right now where I want it to be constrained, but for some reason I just can't get it to be, and so I just kind of mess around with this. Drawing it again. Alright, now I just need to put a vertical constraint there, and I'm going through here trying to figure out how to adjust my my toolbar here, but I mean, if I was just not stupid, I would see that that tool I was looking for was already on the toolbar. Eventually I figured it out. Alright, here I've got it. I'm trying to figure out where to place everything, how far away I want the lid. This is like a tolerancing step, basically. I'm 3D printing it currently at this moment, so I don't know how it came out yet, but I did notice a few things, which we'll cover in another video. So at the top here, we see this lid, and it's not going to work yet. I need to make a cut, so I'm making another datum plane rather than selecting a face, and I'm going to use this plane to cut the inner portion of that lid, so it'll fit around our bottom here. And of course I got to figure out how to do this, and resulting in me making the sketch again. If you know a way to copy a sketch and put it on another sketch in FreeCAD, please in the comments direct me towards that information. I would very much appreciate it. So I'm just measuring the distance here, how thick those walls are basically. I want to know, because I'm 3D printing it, I want to make sure I have enough meat on those walls for it to be structurally good and not break on me. So eventually I start to fillet in different places, and filleting is kind of fun in this, as in it's a little difficult. It's not that difficult, but it's just not intuitive. All the other features I've been using, I can select the tool and then select the edges or faces or whatever I'm doing. But for fillets, they want me to select everything that I'm going to fillet and then select the tool. And it's like the opposite of everything they're teaching you. So, and here I'm making these posts that the elastic will go onto, and I realize this bottom circle is not really necessary because I'm going to do a what they call a groove cut. This is the same kind of thing you would do for like screws or something. So I'm making my axis here, and I'm going to draw a circle, which this is perpendicular to the post basically, and so I'm just gonna place it here, and it'll go around the axis, and then it'll cut. And I kind of play around with these values, trying to figure out how I want it. In reality, I probably should have made that a little larger, but it'll work. We'll see. the beauty of 3D printing is, you can have iterations, and I believe this print only costs like $2 in filament for the whole thing. So, I mean, it's really cheap. And all I would have to do is print a new lid, which is like probably 50 cents at most. It's unfortunate the knobs have to be on the top, because then 3D printing it would be a lot easier. Because we have a raised under portion, and then we have a top that has something on top, so there's no flat face basically. And so I'm revisiting these fillets. I noticed that the bottom ones, if you see that face there, is kind of, it's not filleted, and I'm trying to figure out why. And I thought I had put the fillets on there, but it turns out I didn't. And so I go in and delete all of my fillets for it, and I'm just kind of frustrated. So I just start the fillets over. I get rid of all the fillets and redo them all. But all I had to do was put in another one. I just forgot it. I figured it out after watching this video while editing. Yeah, so I'm just messing around with these fillets, and the problem here is I'm not sure how to manipulate this timeline very well, so it's a little less intuitive. In SolidWorks, you could just like go above, move the timeline before you did that, make changes, and then move it back, and then nothing affects anything that wasn't in the timeline when you did those changes. But here it still does, because even if you like press spacebar, those new changes are still going to the bottom, unless I'm doing it wrong. That's, I think, how you're supposed to do it. Either way though, I'll get better with time. So I use Cura to set up my 3D prints, and there's nothing fancy going on here. I just have some settings I prefer, and we'll go over some 3D printing stuff if people are interested in this. If you have a suggestion for a video, leave it in the comments. Thank you for watching my video. Only 9% of my viewers are subscribers, so if you enjoy this video, leave a like and subscribe. I had fun making this video, and I look forward to the next one. See ya.